While you were sleeping, mentally, you may have missed this, but there has to be strikes back on Iran and what they are trying to pull around the country. Karen Travers, White House correspondent, ABC News, joins us now. For folks that missed it, tell us what happened Friday and update us on where we are this morning.
Yeah, kind of going back to Friday night, the response by the U.S. to that drone attack in Jordan that killed U.S. service members, 3 U.S. service members, and injured more than 40 at the remote base last Sunday. It began on Friday night. The U.S. hit 85 targets at 7 different locations inside Iraq and Syria. And those targets included command and control operation centers, intelligence centers, supply chain facilities, and military depots of the militia groups and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sponsors. Local authorities say there were dozens killed. The administration says that the strikes were successful in degrading and disrupting the militants' ability to continue attacking U.S. forces. The important thing from the administration they kept emphasizing, from the president Friday night to Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, on Sunday, was this is just the beginning of the response. Sullivan said that there will be more steps. Some of those will be seen. Some may not be seen. He didn't go into more detail than that. And the president said that these strikes in response to the Jordan attack will continue at times and places of our choosing.
So if this is to degrade and destroy the ability to continue this, which of course makes sense, in the old days, and I remember the 90s, in the old days when you would strike back militarily prior to this crisis and truth that we have in the world, social media and things of that nature, you could take a moral high ground. You could say, see, what we're doing here is we are stopping our people from militarily attacking us. Propaganda has never been a bigger deal in the way it's spread. So what's the message in Iran? What do the Iranians think?
The Iranians have been saying since last Sunday that they are not responsible for that attack in Jordan. And I think that's why you've seen the administration play or, kind of take such a fine line on this by every time they say, we will respond to this. The president is saying, let all those who seek to do us harm know this. If you harm an American, we will respond. But in that same statement Friday night, reiterating that the U.S. doesn't seek conflict in the Middle East or elsewhere. Administration officials on a conference call Friday night saying the United States doesn't want to have direct conflict with Iran. But they're also saying at the same time that they believe that Iran is financing, supporting, training these groups, and not discouraging these groups from conducting these attacks. So while Iran says we're not responsible, the U.S. says you sort of, not explicitly, but you are tacitly backing these groups, and they continue to do this. We talked about this last week, I think. There was a lot of pressure from some Republicans to take a tougher stance, questions about a strike inside Iran. The White House last week would not explicitly take that off the table, saying it is or is not an option. Just the Pentagon was drawing up plans for the president. But we are told by U.S. officials that the president has misgivings about that, is concerned about taking that step because of what it could mean for a broader conflict in the region.
Well, right. And that's the question. So, we had the retaliatory attacks. There will be more at the time of our choosing. Have we heard from Iraq then, will they
Iran.
then... I'm sorry, Iran. Will they come back and retaliate against us? I mean, they've already had over 150 attacks on troops prior to this.
Yeah, and that's the big question, right now. And do they back off in their support for these groups? That remains to be seen. And then you also have that other track that's happening in the Middle East at the same time, which, we haven't discussed right now, the Houthi attacks that are continuing too. And that was the other response by the administration over the weekend. So you've got the retaliatory campaign for the strike in Jordan, and that's happening at the same time as this other effort to stop the Houthi militants. And I think it's kind of confusing for people because you see those strikes in Yemen and say, well, wait a minute, is that part of the same thing? It's actually something different because that's continuing those same strikes on the Houthis that the U.S. has been doing for several weeks now. Over the weekend, the U.S. and the U.K. hit dozens of Houthi targets across Yemen with strikes that were launched by fighter jets and warships in order to take out what the administration said were imminent threats to Navy ships and merchant vessels in the region. Those attacks by the Houthis have continued despite the response from the United States. And the president was asked yesterday, are the airstrikes working? It wasn't clear which they were referring to. And the president just said simply, yes.
The sentence you just said, it wasn't clear what he was referring to, goes to the larger question. We have to keep our eyes on a lot of balls right now, between what's going on in Ukraine, what goes on in the Middle East, the Yemen situation, the Houthis, all of it, including keeping our eye on China and Taiwan and the little nut from North Korea. We had a Secretary of Defense who says he's fit and ready and back at work. The president's age is always a question. Any resources telling you there's a greater concern of readiness at the Pentagon, or are they proud and full-chested and we're ready to go?
Yeah, not hearing that. Obviously Lloyd Austin was out while he was having his medical procedure and then the recovery. He was back at work, and we saw him do his first press conference last week. He had his first public event, and then he took questions for about a half an hour last week about his medical experience and his hospitalization, and also the broader challenges, all of those that you just listed, that the United States is dealing with right now. So no, not hearing that, but certainly that was something that critics were talking about earlier in the year, when it seemed like there was a lot of confusion as to who was in charge while Austin was on that medical leave.
Karen Travers, ABC News. Before we let you go, on a Monday in Washington with all of these things moving in your world, what do you anticipate the majority of your day covering will be?
I think the big thing will be what comes next. That quote from Jake Sullivan about the response continuing, but some things will be seen and some not seen, has us chasing a lot of questions about what will be not seen, what should we be paying attention for. And then, of course, up on Capitol Hill with the release of the border bill, the border negotiations from bipartisan Senate negotiators over the weekend, and the White House happy they got it done. And because that, of course, means money for Ukraine. But now the question is, does it have a future? Can it pass in the Senate? And if it does, it's already been declared dead on arrival in the House by the Speaker, Mike Johnson. Where does it go next from there?
Hypocrisy meter at 12. Karen, thank you very much. Great work as always.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Karen Travers, ABC News White House correspondent. She's great.
She's great.
Just gets it done, delivers it. And our prayers and our thoughts and our feelings and our hopes are with military families, because there's a lot of folks who don't understand the sacrifice that you make when you love somebody that's not here, they're over there. And just because we live in a drone world doesn't mean your loved ones aren't in harm's way when they go to work.
That's right.
So God bless you, and we're thinking of you.